Welcome to UGC E-Pathshala, Paper 11. I am Shamshad Ahmad Khan, visiting faculty, Delhi University. In this module, we will discuss Japan's environmental policy and the policy measures that it has taken for environmental protection. As you are aware that the current state of global environmental degradation has resulted into global warming. The global warming is resulting into various problems such as substantial biodiversity loss, pollution in freshwater bodies, desertification, etc. These problems call for more radical action from the individual countries. Japan in this regard has been active in wide array of new environmental initiatives aimed at addressing domestic and international environmental concerns and promotion of greater conservation of resources. It has been consistently moving in the direction to have a better and improved environmental image. The Japanese government has been upfront in proclaiming environmental protection as a priority field in Japan's international relations as well as in multilateral cooperations. In this regard, the relative relevance of environmental aid within Japanese official development assistance has increased and it has become an important element of its foreign aid. It may be noted that during 1950s, and 1960s, Japan faced many cases of environmental crisis. Popular cases such as Vidya-mitra disease, which was caused due to contamination of water as industrial water waste was shed into the bay, resulting in mercury poisoning through the consumption of contaminated fish. This disease had not only a devastating effect on the nation's environment but also on the public health. As a result, a nationwide outcry, the Japanese government put into practice first environmental law in 1967. Soon after the environmental law enactment, Japan was considered as an appropriate model of development with industrial policy as well as industrial pollution regulation incorporated. The following decade witnessed expansionist aid policy in which then Prime Minister Takeshita Noburo prioritized environmental overseas aid with a budget of 300 billion yen. Analyzing the importance of global environmental engagement, Japan has been contributing to a greater extent through its technology and aid transfer. Primarily, official development assistance policy have three attributes. These are technical assistance, loans and grants aid developed by Ministry of Foreign Affairs and are managed by independent agencies. The Japanese International Cooperation Agency takes care of technical assistance and infrastructure. Japan Bank of International Cooperation provides financial schemes for assistance project, and Japan External Trade Organization along with Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry assist trade and investment promotion activities overseas. During the 1990s, Japanese government precisely focused on green energy and environmental technology. It was to position Japan as a world leader in environmental issues. In the year 1992, Japan actively participated in the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development at the Rio de Janeiro by contributing $10 billion over the 5 years. Moreover, Japan also signed the Framework Convention on Climate Change and pledged to reduce its carbon dioxide emission at the base year of 1990 by the year 2000. However, ultimately the government was unable to achieve these targets. Consequently, Japan hosted the well-known Kyoto Protocol, a conference of parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in Kyoto, in which Japanese government committed to reduce its greenhouse emission by 6% as compared to the base year of 1990. Due to the Due to the historical capital name associated with the protocol, Japan considerably implemented countermeasures for reducing its carbon emissions. Kyoto Protocol gave Japan an opportunity to announce its own policy framework for developing countries, mainly through focusing on technology transfer. In the first commitment period, that is from 2008 to 2012, the greenhouse emission data showed 1.4% increase. However, with Kyoto mechanism credit, the picture turned out to be total 8.7% reduction as compared to the base year. Undoubtedly, Japan's contribution in United Nations adopted Millennium Development Goals cannot be overlooked. Being a prominent part of the donor community, Japan has contributed over one-fifth of its ODA, increasing it by $10 billion for Millennium Development Goals, which includes environmental protection as the main attribute. This was in response to Japan's criticism of willingness to participate in the multilateral forum. As the World Summit on Sustainable Development held in South Africa 2002, Japanese Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi announced Japan's cooperation in the environmental sector based on the environmental conservation initiatives for sustainable development for developing countries. Within the time span of 5 years, that is from 2002 to 2007, Japan not only promoted the main 4 areas of concern, that is global warming, pollution control, fresh water and conservation of natural environment, but also trained around 5,000 as a human resource in the environmental sector. The total donation of environmental cooperation, including grant aid, loans, technical cooperation and contribution in international forums, accounted around 250 billion yen, which turns out to be one-third of overall ODA. In addition, another initiative by Japan's active effort for environmental cause, Cool Earth 50, was announced by Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in 2007. The Cool Earth 50 had a common goal for the whole world of reducing greenhouse gases emission by 50% than current level by 2050. Subsequent to change in political power from LDP to DPJ, the new ruling party in 2009 announced Japan's support for developing countries through Hatoyama Initiative at the United Nations Summit on Climate Change. The Hatoyama Initiative emphasized on the measures of tackling negative impact of climate change on and carbon dioxide mitigations. The Japanese government promised to provide approximately $15 billion as Japan's first start finance. The total number of projects under this program were as large as 952, covering around 114 countries for the mitigation and adaptation. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in 2013 announced Japan's new set of contribution for developing countries with action for cool earth at COP21. This initiative has been an extension of the existing commitment made at COP15 for financially assisting developing nations with the budget of $100 billion yearly to tackle with negative impacts of climate change. Japan also took the lead efforts towards early enforcement of Paris Agreement for its effective implementation in the later half of 2016. The recent development in Japan's environmental engagement on international front are discussed later in this module. Climate change regime was considered to be in its premature period until the adoption of Kyoto Protocol in 1997. The year 1992 marked the creation of climate regime, including preparing its foundation, creation of formal intergovernmental negotiations, and finally adoption of Framework Convention on Climate Change, which led to the full-fledged establishment of climate change regime with the establishment of Kyoto Protocol. Japan has been an immense part of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change since Kyoto Protocol 1997 to the very recent Paris Agreement that has taken place recently. These conventions are fundamentally based on stabilizing greenhouse gases. Within the time span of 1997 to 2015, Japan's initiative on climate change has evolved considerably in its internal as well as within this time span of 1997 to 2015, Japan's initiative on climate change has evolved considerably in its internal as well as external parameters. Within the time span of 1997 to 2015, Japan's initiative on climate change has evolved considerably in its internal as well as external parameters. When United Nations Conference on Climate Change, which is also known as the Paris Agreement, was announced, Japan took a lead in efforts towards early enforcement and effective implementation by discussing it at the platform such as G7 EC Summit. After the Kyoto Protocol, the new international framework legally formulated the Paris Agreement. The target implemented for the agreement was contributing towards keeping the global average temperature below 2 degrees regardless of developing or developed nations, whereas in the case of Kyoto Protocol, only developed countries were legally bounded. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in one of his statements has stated that Japan aims to play a leading role in crafting arrangements that raises transparency in each country's emission to help accomplish the spirit of the Paris Agreement. This statement truly reflects Japan's position on climate protection. After analyzing recent environmental activism at the international level, one can reach to the conclusion that the core environmental aid is largely dominated by Japan. Being the exception in donor community without any broken promises, Japan has consistently accomplished its international commitment and stayed ahead of their targets. Japan has positively explored new directions and new objectives to diversify its aid. Repeat, previously the aid has been largely confined to one region, but Japan, overcoming the criticism, strategically expanded its aid in international contribution. As far as global environmental concern, it has been making a significant contribution in United Nations, be it contribution in the administrative budget or working on United Nations Council for Climate Change. Japan is the only country which has dedicatedly worked upon UN Initiative for Environmental Protection. The general direction for global environmental engagement has been so far strong and direct. Through its comprehensive strategy based on focusing on its comparative advantage, Japan has justified it through its technological perspective. Since Japan's experience with domestic environmental issues proclaims greater role technological solution, technological perspective is what Japan put forward as a tool for all 21st century oriented environmental issues. Moreover, in long term, though Japan has not been necessarily satisfactory to many of its premises, but it has been viewed positively by the international community. As far as its hardware aid is concerned, such as aid for infrastructure, it is true that the amount of hardware aid has not reduced, but to put into practice, the new projects are designed to endure with least environmental damages. Japan has shown keen interest to continue Kyoto Protocol alike new international framework such as Paris Agreement and Sustainable Development Goals. To meet the Sustainable Development Goal, Japan has been exploring new direction with its new development concept charter. Since Japanese aid is the only international card through which Japan can make a mark, Japanese government's new approach towards proactive contribution to peace is also to broaden its scope of assistance. Needless to say, the recent changes in Japanese development charter and two new international frameworks have given Japan an opportunity to pursue its path for global environmental protection. Furthermore, while assessing Japan's environmental aid as soft power tools, it has been quite successful in representing itself as a responsible nation. Being actively preset international platforms such as United Nations Forum for Climate Change, Japan has gained recognition and it has enhanced its status in the international arena. Thank you.